Nick Aldis could not finish the sentence. A man who has stood in wrestling rings for decades. A man who has faced thousands of people at a time and always found the right words. A man whose entire career has been built on staying strong no matter what the moment demands. That man walked onto the SmackDown stage last night, picked up a microphone, and his voice broke before he could finish 4 simple words. Paul Heyman has passed away. The people sitting in that arena came expecting a wrestling show. They came expecting matches and moments, and the next chapter of stories they had been following all year. What they got instead was something no production team, no creative director, and no amount of experience in this business can ever prepare anyone for. The public confirmation, live on television, in front of millions of people watching at home, that the greatest mind professional wrestling has ever seen is gone forever. If you loved Paul Heyman, if you ever sat in front of a television and felt something real because of the words he spoke or the moments he created, then stay right here. Because this breakdown is going to honor every single thing this man gave to professional wrestling and every single person he left behind. Let us start with Nick Aldis and why his broken voice matters so much. Nick Aldis is not just a WWE official who happened to be assigned a difficult task. He is a professional wrestler whose entire career was shaped by the world Paul Heyman built. Every standard Paul Heyman set. Every possibility Paul Heyman proved was real. Every moment Paul Heyman created that made people believe professional wrestling deserved to be taken seriously. All of that touched Nick Aldis and every single performer of his generation, whether they ever met Paul Heyman directly or not. So when Nick Aldis walked onto that stage last night, he was not just an official delivering an announcement. He was a member of the wrestling community that Paul Heyman built, being asked to speak out loud the words that would make Paul Heyman's absence permanent and real and official in a way that nothing else could. That is not a job. That is a burden. And Nick Aldis carried it with everything he had. His voice broke. His composure shattered. And in that single moment, every person watching understood something very important. What they were seeing was not scripted. It was not performed. It was a real human being experiencing real grief in front of the entire world because some losses are simply too big for any amount of professional training to contain. Paul Heyman's passing is one of those losses. Now the arena itself needs to be talked about because something unusual was happening in that building even before Nick Aldis appeared. Rumors travel fast in a live wrestling crowd. People had their phones out. Social media was already moving. The audience sitting in those seats had been carrying unconfirmed information for hours, and the weight of that unconfirmed information was sitting on top of everyone in that building like a heavy cloud that would not move. The energy was wrong. The atmosphere was wrong. Every person in that arena could feel that something was different about this night without anyone telling them why. And then Nick Aldis walked out. No music. No production. No flashy entrance. Just a man and a microphone and an expression that told the entire arena everything before he said a single word. The crowd went completely silent. Not the excited silence before something big happens. The heavy, airless, almost frightening silence of people who already know what is coming and are not ready to hear it said out loud. And then he started speaking. And his voice broke. And Paul Heyman's passing became real. Seth Rollins was not at SmackDown last night. The man who attacked Paul Heyman on Raw. The man whose calculated, cold, deliberately targeted assault started the chain of events that ended with Nick Aldis standing on that stage unable to finish his sentence. That man was nowhere in the building where the consequences of his choices were being felt by every single person present. And his absence was louder than any entrance he could have made. Every tear in that arena. Every broken sentence from Nick Aldis. Every moment of silence from a crowd that did not know how to respond to something this real happening in a place built for entertainment. All of it happened in a space that Seth Rollins created. And Seth Rollins was somewhere else while it happened. That is the most uncomfortable truth about last night. The grief was present and real and public. The person responsible for it was not. WWE now faces a decision about Seth Rollins that goes far beyond any storyline or any match at any pay-per-view event. A member of their roster made choices that resulted in a colleague's death. What does an organization do with that? How does professional wrestling as an industry reckon with that reality in a way that actually means something? The wrestling community deserves an answer to that question, not a creative direction. A real answer. The SmackDown roster was present for Nick Aldis' announcement in different ways. Some visible, some not. But every single person in that building was grieving. People who worked alongside Paul Heyman for years. People who were shaped by his influence without ever having a single direct conversation with him. People whose feelings about him were complicated the way feelings about any significant person in a high-pressure environment always become complicated over time. All of them carrying the same weight. All of them trying to figure out how to exist inside a working environment that has just lost the person who made it worth what it was. And then the show went on. Matches happened. Segments were completed. The machinery of a live WWE broadcast kept moving because stopping entirely would not have brought Paul Heyman back and would not have honored him any more than continuing did. But everything that happened on SmackDown after that announcement happened differently. Every superstar who performed that night performed in the shadow of what had just been confirmed. And that shadow is not going away in a week or a month. Paul Heyman built SmackDown into something great. The Bloodline era. The Roman Reigns transformation. The years of storytelling that produced some of the most compelling professional wrestling television this generation has ever seen. None of that exists the way it existed without Paul Heyman's mind behind it. When historians look back at SmackDown's greatest chapter, they will find Paul Heyman's name woven into every single page of it. Nick Aldis stood on the stage that Paul Heyman helped build and could not finish the sentence that confirmed Paul Heyman was gone. That broken sentence on that specific stage is the most honest tribute professional wrestling could have offered. A voice breaking on a stage built by the person whose absence broke it. Paul Heyman gave everything to this industry. Every word, every idea, every late-night creative session, every promo that made someone a star, every moment that made professional wrestling feel like it genuinely mattered. He deserved more time. He deserved to finish his own story on his own terms. Thank you, Paul Heyman, for every single word.